My boss looked at me with surprise and asked, "Why did you come in a taxi today? What happened to the car we gave you for your promotion?" Before I could say anything, my husband from HR smiled and said, "Her sister uses that car now." My boss went quiet for a moment, and what he did next made me truly proud. "Why did you come in a taxi today?" Elena Rodriguez was looking at me with concern, her voice gentle but direct. My boss, the woman I respected more than anyone in the company, had just asked me the question I'd been dreading for 3 weeks. "What happened to the car we gave you for your promotion?" I could feel Owen's presence beside me in that conference room like static electricity. My husband, the company's HR director, the man who was supposed to be on my side. Before I could answer, before I could make up another excuse about car trouble or maintenance or anything that would protect him, Owen spoke. "Her sister is using that car now." His tone was so casual, so matter-of-fact, like he was commenting on the weather. Like he hadn't just announced to my boss that he'd given away company property without my permission. The silence that followed lasted maybe 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds I watched my entire marriage, my career, my carefully constructed life, all of it, start to crack apart. And Elena's face told me she was about to do something about it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Let me tell you how I got to that conference room, to that moment, to the point where my own husband could casually destroy me in front of my boss without even looking up from his phone. It started 3 weeks earlier over breakfast. I'd woken up at 6:15 a.m. like I had every morning for 6 years, slipping out of bed without waking Owen. The house was silent except for the hum of that expensive espresso machine he'd insisted we buy, restaurant grade, professional quality, something I'd never learned to use properly because the third time I tried, he'd sighed and taken over because I was doing it wrong. So I made instant coffee instead. The cheap kind Owen said was garbage. I microwaved water in a mug and stirred in the crystals, standing at the kitchen window and watching the sunrise paint Camelback Mountain in shades of pink and gold. My Audi should have been in the driveway. The pearl white Q5 with caramel leather interior that came with my promotion to Senior Solutions Architect last year. My designated parking spot at work had been empty for weeks now, and every morning I stood at this window, I felt that absence like a missing tooth. You can't stop touching it with your tongue even though it hurts. I told myself it was temporary. That Owen's sister Charlotte really did need it. That I was being difficult, materialistic, petty for caring so much about a car. But standing there with my cheap coffee, feeling the silence of the house press down on me, I knew it wasn't really about the car. It was about the fact that I was disappearing. Not dramatically. Not in some obvious way that people could point to and say, that's when Abigail Morrison lost herself. But in small daily erasures. My coffee preferences didn't matter because Owen's espresso machine was better. My work schedule didn't matter because Owen had already volunteered me for his mother's charity board. My company car didn't matter because Charlotte needed it more. My voice, my choices, my needs, all of them filed under not important right now until there was almost nothing left. That particular morning 3 weeks ago, Owen had been sitting at the kitchen island scrolling through his phone with one hand, eating steel-cut oats with the other. His personal trainer recommended them, high-fiber, sustainable energy. We'd stopped buying the cereal I liked 6 months ago. "Charlotte's Jeep is in the shop," he said without looking up. His voice was casual, distracted. "She's got that big interview Tuesday. Think she could borrow your car for a couple days?" I'd hesitated, my fork halfway to my mouth. The Audi wasn't really mine, not the way Owen made it sound. It was company property assigned to me as part of my promotion package. My name was on the registration. I was responsible for it. If Charlotte got into an accident, got a ticket, anything, I'd be the one answering to Scottsdale Tech's legal team. "I don't know if that's a good idea," I started to say. "It's technically company property and I'm liable if..." Owen's eyes flicked up from his phone. Just for a second. But that look said everything. The one that made my stomach tighten. The one that told me I was about to fail some invisible test I didn't know I was taking. "You don't trust my family, do you?" His voice was quiet, almost sad. "After everything they've done for us?" There was the trap I'd learned to recognize but never learned to avoid. His parents had loaned us the down payment for our house 3 years ago. $40,000 that Owen brought up whenever I tried to set a boundary with his family. When his mother called at 10 p.m. on work nights and I didn't answer. When I suggested we skip his brother's birthday party because I had a major presentation the next day. When I asked if we could spend Christmas with my family for once. The down payment. Always the down payment. Of course I trust them, I heard myself say. The words came out automatically like I'd been programmed. She can take it. Owen smiled, not the real smile I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago, but the one that meant he'd won something. Thanks, babe. You're the best. He went back to his phone. I went back to my oatmeal. And that sick feeling in my stomach settled in a little deeper. Charlotte was supposed to return the car after 2 days. Then it was 3 days. Then a week. Then just a few more days, turned into she's got client meetings, turned into her Jeep needs more work than they thought. By week 3 I'd stopped asking. Because every time I brought it up, Owen made me feel like I was the problem. It's just a car, Abby. Why are you being so materialistic? She's family. Family helps each other out. I didn't realize you were this selfish. Each conversation ended the same way. With me apologizing, backing down, feeling guilty for caring about something that apparently made me a terrible person. And the thing is, it wasn't just the car. Looking back, I could see the pattern so clearly. The credit card Owen opened in my name without asking. I'd found out when the bill arrived with $3,000 in charges I didn't make. When I confronted him, he'd looked confused, almost hurt. I thought you'd want the rewards points. Why are you being weird about this? The vacation days I'd lost because he volunteered me for his mother's charity board without checking my schedule first. I told them you'd be perfect for the social media position. You're good with computers, right? Never mind that I was a senior solutions architect, not a social media manager. The dinner parties where he'd interrupt my stories to explain to our friends what I really meant when I talked about my work. Later, in private, he'd say he was just trying to help me sound more professional, less technical, more relatable. The family gatherings he'd schedule on weekends when I had major deadlines, then act wounded when I said I needed to work. You're always putting your job before family. My parents are starting to notice. Each incident was small enough to explain away. Small enough that complaining about it made me sound petty. But they weren't small. They were pieces of myself I was handing over one after another until I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. The promotion to senior solutions architect should have changed things. It was the achievement I'd worked toward for 5 years. Validation that I was good at what I did. A 20% raise that meant I was finally earning close to what Owen made. Instead, it became another thing Owen managed. Don't brag about it too much, he told me the night I got the news. People will think you're arrogant. Let me handle the announcement at the company social. I know how to position these things. So at the celebration dinner the company threw, Owen gave the toast about my promotion. Owen explained to everyone what my new role would entail. Owen got to be proud while I stood there smiling, nodding, feeling like a prop in my own success story. Now 3 weeks into taking taxis to work, that feeling had evolved into something I couldn't ignore anymore. The rideshare drivers saw it. The way I'd climb into their beat-up Toyotas wearing expensive work clothes, apologizing for needing to get to Scottsdale by 9 a.m., checking my phone anxiously as traffic crawled. My team saw it. The careful glances they'd exchange when I rushed in 13 minutes late, flustered and apologetic, my hair still damp because I'd had to wait for the rideshare instead of leaving on my own schedule. I'd been the first person in the office every morning for 3 years. Now I was the one who couldn't get it together, who smelled like someone else's vanilla air freshener, who was always running behind. My assistant Jennifer had started giving me those looks. The kind you give someone who's falling apart but won't admit it. Everything okay, Abigail? She'd asked yesterday, her voice gentle. Fine, I'd said automatically. Just some car trouble. She'd nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe me. The worst part wasn't the logistics or even the money, though watching $15 to $20 disappear every morning added up fast. The worst part was Owen's complete indifference to what this was costing me. Every morning I'd ask about the car. Every morning he'd have a reason why Charlotte needed it just a few more days. When I pushed harder, his patience would evaporate. It's just a car, Abby. Why are you making everything so difficult? And I'd back down. Because somewhere in the past 6 years I'd learned that pushing back cost more than giving in. That Tuesday morning, the morning of the leadership meeting, I'd paid the taxi driver $14 and rushed into the building with 8 minutes to spare. My phone had buzzed with a text from Elena. Asterisk leadership meeting at 9. Conference room B. Don't be late. Asterisk. I'd made it to my desk, grabbed my laptop and walked into that glass-walled conference room at 8:58 a.m. My team was already there. Marcus with his thermal coffee mug. Jennifer with her color-coded planner. The two new hires whose names I kept mixing up. And Owen. Standing next to Elena in his navy suit and burgundy tie, wearing his HR director smile. We'd left home together 40 minutes earlier in tense silence. Now he looked at me like I was just another employee. The meeting started normally enough. Elena discussed Q4 priorities. Marcus presented the new client dashboard. Jennifer outlined the API integration timeline. I tried to focus, but I could feel Owen's presence like a low-voltage current running through the room. Then the meeting ended. People started gathering their laptops, checking their phones, preparing to leave. Abigail, can you stay for a minute? Elena's voice was kind but firm. I froze. Owen was still there, standing by the window with his phone, pretending not to listen. Elena closed the door. And that's when she asked the question that would change everything. Why did you come in a taxi today? The question hung in the air between us. Elena's dark eyes were fixed on mine, concerned but patient. Waiting. What happened to the car we gave you for your promotion? My throat felt tight. I could feel Owen's presence behind me like heat from a furnace. He'd been standing by the window when Elena asked me to stay, pretending to scroll through his phone. But I knew he was listening. I knew that stillness in his posture. The way he held himself when he was absorbing every word, cataloging every response, preparing his counterargument. 6 years of marriage had taught me to read him better than he ever bothered to read me. My mind raced through possible answers. Maintenance issues. Something vague about scheduling conflicts. All the lies I'd been telling myself for 3 weeks, now ready to be deployed to protect him. To protect us. To maintain the carefully constructed image of Abigail Morrison, senior solutions architect, who had her life together. But my mouth wouldn't form the words. And before I could force them out, Owen spoke. Her sister is using that car now. His voice was pleasant. Casual. The same tone he used when mentioning he'd picked up dry cleaning or confirming dinner reservations. Like he was commenting on something completely ordinary and unremarkable. Like he hadn't just told my boss that he'd given away company property without my permission. He didn't even look up from his phone. The silence that followed felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I watched Elena's expression change in real time, confusion flickering across her face first, her eyebrows drawing together slightly. Then understanding as the words registered. Then something else. Something that looked like anger but controlled. Held behind the professional mask she wore so well. Her eyes moved from Owen to me and I saw the question in them before she spoke it. I'm sorry, Elena said slowly, her voice carefully neutral. Did you just say her sister is using a company vehicle? Owen finally looked up from his phone. His smile was still in place. That easy, charming smile that had gotten him through 1,000 difficult HR conversations. It's temporary, he said as if that explained everything. Family situation. Charlotte needed reliable transportation for some important meetings. You know how it is. Charlotte is your sister, Elena said. Her voice had gone cold in a way I'd never heard before. Not Abigail's. Something shifted in the air. I felt it like a physical thing. The moment when the performance became real, when the carefully maintained separation between our personal lives and professional lives collapsed completely. And I realized I had a choice to make. I could back Owen up. I could smile and nod and say yes, it was temporary, it was fine, I'd agreed to it. I could protect him the way I'd been protecting him for 6 years, making myself smaller so he could stay comfortable. Or I could tell the truth. Actually, I heard myself say, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Steadier than I felt, clearer than it had been in months. We never discussed it. Owen's head snapped toward me. The smile faltered for just a second, genuine surprise breaking through his practiced composure. He hadn't expected me to contradict him. Not here. Not in front of my boss. Owen told me his sister needed the car for 2 days. I continued, and now that I'd started, I couldn't seem to stop. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been asking for it back ever since. Abby. Owen's voice had an edge now. A warning. Don't do this here. Don't do what? Something was rising in my chest. 6 years of swallowed words, unspoken resentments, accommodations I'd made while telling myself it was compromise. Tell the truth about what happened to company property? You're making this into something it's not. No, I said, and I was standing now, though I didn't remember getting up. I'm finally being honest about what's been happening. The car is registered to me. It's company property. I'm liable for it. Your sister has had it for 3 weeks without authorization, and every time I've asked for it back, you've made me feel like I'm being unreasonable for caring. Owen's jaw tightened. That muscle in his cheek that twitched when he was angry. This is a private matter between us. We can discuss it at home. It stopped being private when it involved company assets, Elena said, and her voice cut through the tension like a blade. She stood up, and there was something formidable about her in that moment. This woman who'd always been kind to me, encouraging, supportive. Now she looked like someone who could dismantle a person with words alone. Owen, you need to leave. Abigail and I need to talk. As Director of Human Resources, Owen started. You'll recuse yourself from any matters involving your spouse, Elena interrupted, and the smile on her face was sharp enough to draw blood. That's policy. Section 4, Paragraph 2 of the Employee Handbook. You wrote the policy, in fact. I remember the meeting. For a long moment Owen just stood there. I watched him calculating, weighing his options. His eyes moved from Elena to me and back again. I could see him trying to figure out how to regain control of the situation, how to reframe this so he came out looking reasonable. But there was no reframe available. Not this time. He straightened his tie with sharp, precise movements. Fine, he said, his voice tight. I'll be in my office if you need me. He picked up his phone and walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when he paused, looking back at me. Not at Elena. At me. The expression on his face was one I'd seen before. Usually late at night after I'd pushed back on something he wanted. After I'd set a boundary he didn't like. After I'd made him feel like he wasn't in control. It was disappointment mixed with something colder. Something that said, you'll regret this. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him with a soft, final sound. I stood there in the sudden silence, my heart pounding, my hands trembling slightly. I'd just contradicted my husband in front of my boss. I'd just made our private dysfunction public. I'd just blown up whatever fragile peace we'd been maintaining. And I had no idea what happened next. Elena gestured to the chair across from her. Sit down, Abigail. Her voice was gentler now. I sat, my legs feeling unsteady. I'm going to ask you some questions, Elena said, settling back into her own chair. And I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that? I nodded, not trusting my voice. How long has Charlotte had your car? 3 weeks. Almost 3 weeks exactly. And you agreed to let her borrow it? I hesitated. Owen asked if she could use it for a couple of days. Her Jeep was in the shop. He had an interview. I said yes because I stopped, unsure how to explain the trap of that conversation, the way Owen had made it impossible to say no without seeming heartless. Because, Elena prompted gently. Because saying no would have made me look like I didn't trust his family. And his parents loaned us money for our house, and Owen reminds me of that whenever I try to set boundaries with them. Elena's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Go on. It was supposed to be 2 days. Then it turned into more. Every time I asked when I'd get it back, Owen had a reason why Charlotte needed it longer. Client meetings. Networking events. Her Jeep needed more work. And when I pushed, he'd make me feel like I was being materialistic and selfish. Like caring about the car meant I was a bad person. The car is company property, Elena said. Assigned to you as part of your compensation package. You're responsible for it. I know. I tried to explain that to Owen, but he said I was hiding behind policy to avoid helping family. Elena was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming softly on the conference table. Then she asked a question that made my stomach drop. Abigail, is this the first time Owen has used his position or your relationship to influence your professional life? The question sat between us like a live grenade. I thought about the credit card Owen had opened in my name without asking. The way he'd pressured my supervisor to lower my performance ratings because he said it wouldn't look right if I got top marks while other people were being managed out. The vacation days I'd lost because he'd volunteered me for things without checking my schedule. The promotion opportunities I'd missed. And now I wondered if Owen had anything to do with those too. I thought about Vanessa, the woman I'd later learn had worked under Owen years ago, who'd quit because he'd made her work life unbearable after she set boundaries with him. I thought about 6 years of small erosions, tiny compromises, moments where Owen had made me question my own judgment and perception until I couldn't trust myself anymore. "No," I said quietly. "It's not the first time." Elena leaned forward, her expression serious. "I need you to tell me everything, Abigail. Not just about the car. Everything. And I need you to be specific. Dates, conversations, specific instances where Owen's personal relationship with you affected your work or his professional decisions." My hands were shaking. This felt enormous. Dangerous. Like I was about to step off a cliff and I had no idea if there was ground below or just empty air. "What's going to happen?" I whispered. Elena's voice was steady, certain. "What's going to happen is I'm going to retrieve your car today. And then I'm going to have a very serious conversation with our CEO about whether someone who can't maintain professional boundaries should be running our HR department." She stood up and walked to the door, opening it slightly. "David," she called to her assistant, "I need you to contact our legal team. Tell them it's urgent. Unauthorized use of company property and potential conflict of interest in HR operations." Then she turned back to me and her expression softened slightly. "Abigail, I need you to understand something. You're one of our best architects. Your work is exceptional. I've watched you build systems that have saved this company millions of dollars. And I've watched you show up early, stay late, and deliver beyond expectations for 3 years." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "What I should have noticed, and I'm sorry I didn't, is that you've been shrinking. Getting smaller. Less confident. I see it now. And I should have seen it sooner." Tears burned in my eyes. I blinked them back, but one escaped anyway, sliding hot down my cheek. "I thought I was handling it," I said, my voice breaking. "You were surviving it," Elena said gently. "There's a difference." Elena handed me a tissue from the box on the conference table. I hadn't realized I was crying until that moment. Silent tears that blurred my vision and made my throat ache. "Take your time," she said, sitting back down across from me. "But I need you to tell me everything, Abigail. Not just about the car. Everything." I wiped my eyes, took a shaky breath, and began to talk. Felt like watching someone else speak. Like I was floating above my body, observing this woman in expensive work clothes unravel 6 years of marriage in a glass-walled conference room. The words came out haltingly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. I told her about the breakfast 3 weeks ago. Owen scrolling through his phone, asking so casually if Charlotte could borrow the car. The way he'd looked at me when I hesitated, that expression that said I was failing some invisible test. The guilt trip about his family, the down payment, all the ways I owed them. But then I kept going. And words I'd never said out loud to anyone started spilling out. "The credit card. I found out when the bill came," I said, my voice steadier now. $3,000 in charges I didn't make. When I asked Owen about it, he looked at me like I was crazy. He said he thought I'd want the rewards points, that he was doing me a favor. He made me feel like I was overreacting for being upset that he'd opened a line of credit in my name without asking. Elena's expression was unreadable, but she nodded for me to continue. "The vacation time. His mother runs this charity board. They needed someone to handle their social media, posting updates, managing their website. Owen volunteered me without checking my calendar first. I had a major client presentation that same week. When I told him I couldn't do it, he said his mother would be humiliated, that I was always putting my career before family." I could hear how it sounded. Small complaints, minor inconveniences. The kind of things that happen in marriages. But Elena's face told me she was hearing something else. The dinner parties. We hosted one last month for some of Owen's colleagues. I was telling a story about this system integration project I'd led. It was complex, took 6 months, saved the company about $2 million in operational costs. Owen interrupted me halfway through. He explained it differently, made it sound simpler, less technical. More accessible, he said later. He said I was boring people with jargon, that I needed to learn how to communicate with normal people. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the table. The thing is, these all felt small at the time. Individual incidents that I could explain away. But sitting here now, saying them out loud, I can see a pattern, Elena finished quietly. "You can see a pattern." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes thoughtful. Then she leaned forward slightly and asked the question that made my entire world tilt on its axis. Abigail, has Owen ever used his position as HR director to influence decisions that benefited his family or friends? The air in the room felt thin. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of voices in the hallway outside, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I thought about Trevor, Owen's cousin. Fresh out of community college, barely any experience, but somehow he'd gotten hired into IT despite bombing half his technical interview. I'd heard about it from Marcus, one of the interviewers, who'd been confused when Trevor got the offer despite his recommendation not to hire. Owen had been on that hiring panel. I thought about Owen's college roommate, different Marcus, not my colleague, who'd gotten promoted to team lead in the sales department over two people who'd been with the company longer and had better performance records. Owen had consulted on that promotion decision. I remembered him mentioning it casually over dinner, saying he'd put in a good word. And then I thought about last month. My direct supervisor Paul pulling me aside in the hallway, looking uncomfortable, his eyes not quite meeting mine. Owen thinks maybe we should rate you meets expectations instead of exceeds this quarter, Paul had said carefully, quietly, like he was embarrassed to even be having the conversation. My stomach had dropped. Why? He's worried about optics. With the recent layoffs and performance management initiatives, he thinks it won't look right if you get top marks while other people are being managed out. You understand, right? I'd understood that my own husband was sabotaging my career to avoid the appearance of favoritism. I'd understood that my actual performance didn't matter as much as how it looked. I'd understood that I was supposed to accept a lower rating, a smaller bonus, diminished recognition, all to make Owen's job easier. And I'd accepted it without fighting. Because fighting Owen never ended well. Yes, I told Elena now, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, he has. Elena's expression went from concerned to something harder. Something cold and sharp. I need you to document everything, she said, and her voice had taken on a different quality. Not my kind boss anymore, but someone who was preparing for war. Dates, conversations, specific instances. Every time Owen influenced a hiring decision, a promotion, a performance review. Every time he used his position to benefit himself or his family or his friends. Can you do that? What's going to happen? I asked. The question came out small, frightened. Elena stood up and there was steel in her posture. What's going to happen is I'm going to retrieve your car today. The legal team will send Charlotte a formal demand letter. If she doesn't return it by tomorrow morning, we'll escalate appropriately. She walked to the door and opened it. David, she called to her assistant, I need you to get Richard Chin on the phone. Tell him it's urgent. And contact our legal team. I need them to draft a demand letter for return of company property within the next hour. He turned back to me. And then I'm going to have a very serious conversation with our CEO about whether someone who can't maintain professional boundaries should be running our HR department. My heart was racing. Elena, I don't want to get Owen fired. This isn't about what you want, Elena said, and her voice was firm but not unkind. This is about policy violations, conflicts of interest, and potential abuse of position. If even half of what you've told me can be documented and verified, Owen has created serious liability for this company. She came back to the table, sat down across from me one more time. Abigail, I need you to hear something. You're one of our best architects. The system you designed for client data management, that alone saved us close to $3 million in the first year. The API integration you're working on now is going to revolutionize how we handle vendor relationships. You're not here because of Owen. You're here because you're brilliant at what you do. Her expression softened slightly. But what I should have noticed, and I'm sorry I didn't, is that you've been shrinking. Getting smaller. Less confident. A year ago you would have pushed back when I questioned the API timeline. You would have defended your work. Now you apologize first and explain second. I see it now. I should have seen it sooner. The tears came again, hot and unstoppable. I thought I was handling it. You were surviving it, Elena said gently. There's a difference. She pulled a legal pad from her briefcase and slid it across the table with a pen. Write down everything you can remember. Start with the most recent incidents and work backward. Be as specific as possible. Dates, times, witnesses if there were any. Don't worry about making it organized or formal. Just get it all down. I stared at the blank page, pen in hand, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. Take the rest of the day, Elena said. Don't go home if you don't want to. Go to a coffee shop, a friend's house, anywhere you can think clearly. Write everything down. Send it to me by end of day tomorrow. She stood up, then paused at the door. And Abigail? What Owen did, making you feel crazy for having normal boundaries, using his position to control you, volunteering you for things without consent. That has a name. And it's not okay. Not in a marriage and definitely not in our workplace. I left the building in a daze. The Phoenix heat hit me like a physical wall when I stepped outside, but I barely felt it. I got into a ride share, another $14 I couldn't really afford, and gave the driver the address of a coffee shop in Scottsdale I used to go to before Owen decided it was overpriced and pretentious. The coffee shop was busy with the late morning crowd. I ordered something expensive without looking at the price, found a corner table and sat there staring at my phone. 17 missed calls from Owen. 23 text messages. We need to talk. Come home. Why are you ignoring me? This is ridiculous, Abby. You're making a huge mistake. My mother is calling me. What did you tell Elena? Answer your phone. I turned the phone face down and tried to breathe. My hands were still shaking. Everything felt surreal. The normalcy of the coffee shop. People on laptops working, couples having conversations, someone's child coloring at a nearby table. The world going on as usual while mine fell apart. I needed to talk to someone. Someone who would tell me if I was overreacting, if I was making too big a deal out of this, if I was about to ruin my marriage over things that didn't really matter. I picked up my phone and called Rachel. She answered on the second ring. Hey, I was just thinking about you. What's up? Rachel, my voice cracked. Something happened at work. With Owen. I need to talk to you. Her tone changed immediately, sharpening with concern. What did he do? So I told her. All of it. The car, the conference room, Elena's questions, the investigation that was about to start. The words tumbled out faster than I could organize them, overlapping and circling back, but Rachel listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a beat of silence. Then, he did what? Her voice was sharp with fury. Abby, that's not just inconsiderate. That car is your compensation. Your property. Your responsibility. What he did, that's financial abuse. He knew exactly what he was doing. He said it was temporary, I heard myself say weakly. That I was being selfish about family. His family, not yours, Rachel shot back. And he's an HR, he knows company policy better than anyone. He knew giving away your company car without authorization was wrong. He counted on you being too nice to call him out on it. He was right. I'd spent 6 years being too nice. 6 years making myself smaller. 6 years accepting less and less until there was almost nothing left. And it had cost me everything. You need to get out of there, Rachel said, her voice firm through the phone. Don't go home tonight. Come stay with me. I was still sitting in that coffee shop in Scottsdale, my expensive drink going cold in front of me. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows felt too bright, too normal for what was happening. I can't just leave, I said. We own a house together. Where would I even? My apartment. Guest room. It's yours for as long as you need it. Rachel's tone left no room for argument. Abby, listen to me. You just told your boss that your husband has been sabotaging your career and abusing his position for years. No one knows that by now. Do you really want to be alone with him tonight? My hands went cold. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Hadn't considered what would happen when Owen and I were in the same house after what I'd done. Pack a bag, Rachel said. I'm serious. Get what you need and come here. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat there for another 20 minutes staring at my phone, watching the messages from Owen pile up. The tone had shifted from demanding to angry to something that made my stomach twist. You've made a huge mistake. My mother is devastated. I hope you're proud of yourself. This is who you really are, isn't it? Vindictive and cruel. At 3 p.m. a new text came through. Unknown number. I opened it. Your company's lawyers just sent me some threatening letter about the car. Are you serious right now? After everything our family has done for you? You're actually going to destroy Owen's career and humiliate us all over a car? Charlotte, Owen's sister. The one who'd been driving my Audi for 3 weeks. My hands were shaking. Part of me, the part that had been trained over 6 years, wanted to apologize immediately. To text back and say it was all a misunderstanding, that I'd fix it, that I was sorry for causing trouble. But a larger part of me, the part that had finally woken up in that conference room this morning, felt something different. Relief. The company was actually doing something. They'd sent a legal letter. They were taking this seriously. Elena hadn't just made sympathetic noises and sent me home with empty promises. She'd taken action. I didn't respond to Charlotte's text. Instead, I checked my work email. There was a message from Elena, sent 20 minutes ago. Legal team has issued formal demand for return of company property. Vehicle must be returned to Scottsdale Tech Plaza parking lot by 10 a.m. tomorrow, or we will involve law enforcement. You did the right thing, Abigail. I screenshot the email and saved it to 3 different places. Then I turned my phone completely off. I needed silence. Space to think. Room to process what I'd just set in motion without Owen's rage or his family's guilt trips or the constant buzz of notifications telling me I was a terrible person. I ordered another coffee, this one I actually drank, and opened my laptop. The legal pad Elena had given me was in my bag. I pulled it out and started writing. Everything I could remember. The credit card. The vacation time. The dinner parties. The performance reviews. The more I wrote, the clearer the pattern became. By the time I looked up, it was after 5 p.m. The coffee shop was quieter now, the afternoon crowd replaced by students with textbooks and a few people on dates. I packed up my things, called a rideshare, and headed home. I had to go back eventually. I needed clothes, my toiletries, important documents. I couldn't avoid Owen forever. But when the driver pulled up to my house at 7 p.m. and I saw Owen's Range Rover in the driveway, my heart started racing. I paid the driver and walked to the front door. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. Owen was in the kitchen, pacing. His tie was loosened, his face red, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. The second I walked in, he spun toward me. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" His voice was loud, sharp, filled with barely controlled rage. I'd heard this tone before, usually late at night after I'd pushed back on something he wanted. But never quite this intense. "Charlotte is humiliated," he continued, not waiting for me to answer. "My mother has been calling me all afternoon crying. The company sent my sister a legal threat, Abigail. A legal threat. Over a car." I set my bag down carefully on the kitchen counter. "It's not my car," I said, keeping my voice level. "It's company property. I'm responsible for it. It's been 3 weeks. Nothing happened to it. You're doing this to punish me. To get back at me for I don't even know what." His voice was rising, that edge of rage that used to make me back down immediately. "You went to Elena and made me look incompetent. You turned a simple family favor into some kind of corporate scandal." "I didn't turn it into anything," I said. "You gave away company property without authorization. That's a policy violation." Elena asked me about the car and I told her the truth. "We're married. What's yours is mine. Not when it's company property assigned specifically to me. Not when my name is on the registration and I'm legally liable for what happens to it." Owen's laugh was bitter, ugly. "This is about control. You can't stand that I made a decision without asking your permission. You've always been like this. Everything has to be exactly how Abigail wants it or you throw a tantrum." I stared at him. This man I'd spent 6 years trying to please. This man I'd made myself smaller for, quieter for, less demanding for. "No, Owen," I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. "This is about respect. Something you've never shown me." His face went even redder. "I've given you everything. A home, a life, support for your career." "You've sabotaged my career," I interrupted. "You've been telling my supervisor to lower my performance ratings for 2 years. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Owen went very still. That muscle in his jaw twitched. "I don't know what you're talking about. Paul called me this morning. He told me everything. Every review cycle, you pull him aside and suggest I'm not performing as well as I should be. That I'm coasting. That I'm not a team player." "I was trying to protect you," Owen said, but his voice had lost some of its conviction. "The optics of you getting top ratings while I'm your husband and the HR director, it would have looked bad for both of us. So you tanked my bonuses and my promotion opportunities to protect your image." "Our image. It's our life, Abby. Our reputation." I picked up my bag. "I'm staying at Rachel's tonight." "You're leaving," Owen's voice cracked slightly. You're actually leaving over this? I'm leaving because I can't be here right now. Because standing in this kitchen with you feels like drowning. I walked to our bedroom, the one we'd shared for 6 years, and started pulling clothes out of the closet. Owen followed me, standing in the doorway. If you leave tonight, don't bother coming back, he said. His voice was quiet now, cold. This is it, Abby. If you walk out that door, we're done. I paused, a sweater in my hands. 6 years ago that threat would have worked. I would have backed down, apologized, done whatever it took to fix things. But that was before. Before the car. Before the conference room. Before I'd finally seen the pattern for what it was. Okay, I said quietly. We're done. I packed 2 bags. One with clothes, one with documents, laptop, things I'd need. Owen stood in the doorway the entire time, watching me with an expression that shifted between rage and disbelief. When I was finished, I walked past him without another word. Down the stairs, through the kitchen to the front door. You'll regret this, Owen called after me. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. I didn't answer. I just walked out into the warm Phoenix evening, threw my bags in the trunk of another rideshare, and gave the driver Rachel's address in Tempe. Rachel was waiting for me when I arrived. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. You did the right thing, she said. You did the right thing. I let her lead me inside. She poured wine, ordered takeout, and didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. I curled up on her couch and tried to breathe through the panic that was rising in my chest. My phone, back on now, wouldn't stop buzzing. Owen's mother. His brother. Charlotte again. All of them with variations of the same message. I was destroying their family. I was cruel. I was vindictive. I was going to regret this. I blocked the numbers one by one. The next morning I woke up on Rachel's couch to a text from Elena, retrieved at 8 a.m. Full tank, professionally detailed. Welcome back. There was a photo attached. My Audi parked in my designated spot at Scottsdale Tech Plaza, gleaming in the early morning sun. I started crying and couldn't stop. Rachel made me coffee, let me cry, and eventually said, "What do you need to do today?" "I need to call Paul," I said. "My supervisor. He sent me an email yesterday about the performance reviews. I need to hear the full story." Paul answered on the 3rd ring. "Abigail. I'm glad you called. Tell me everything," I said. "Please." So he did. Owen hadn't just suggested lowering my rating last month. He'd been doing it for 2 years. Every single review cycle, Owen would find a moment to pull Paul aside, in the hallway, in the break room, once even in the parking lot, and plant seeds of doubt. He'd say things like, "I worry Abigail's getting too focused on the technical side and losing sight of the team dynamics," Paul explained, his voice heavy with guilt. Or, "I think she's coasting a bit this quarter, don't you?" He was subtle about it. Never directly telling me what to do. Just suggesting. Implying. And I listened because he's HR and you're his wife, and I thought he knew something I didn't. "Did anyone else know?" I asked. "I don't think so. He always caught me alone. And I'm ashamed to say I never questioned it. I should have. I'm sorry, Abigail." After I hung up, I sat in Rachel's guest room and stared at the wall. 2 years. Owen had been systematically undermining my career for 2 years. While telling me he was proud of me. While smiling at company events. While presenting himself as the supportive husband. My phone rang. "Elena. Can you come in this afternoon?" she asked. "Richard Chin wants to speak with you." "Theo. We're moving forward with a formal investigation, and we need to ask you some questions." "What kind of questions?" "Everything, Abigail. Every interaction you've had with Owen at work. Every decision he may have influenced. Every time he used his position inappropriately. We need a complete picture." I arrived at the office at 2 p.m. Elena met me in the lobby and walked me to a conference room I'd never been in before. One of the executive-level rooms with leather chairs and a view of the entire tech park. Richard Chin was there. So were 2 people I didn't recognize. A man and woman in expensive suits with legal pads and recording equipment. "Abigail," Richard said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming in. These are our outside counsel. We've brought them in to ensure this investigation is handled properly. Please sit down." For the next 2 hours they asked me questions. They recorded everything. They took notes. They asked for details I'd forgotten, dates I couldn't remember, context I had to piece together. I told them about Trevor. About Owen's roommate. About my performance reviews. About the complaints that had disappeared. With each answer, the lawyer's expressions grew more serious. Finally, Richard Chin leaned back in his chair and looked at me directly. Abigail, what you've described represents serious violations of company policy and professional ethics. We're going to be placing Owen on administrative leave effective immediately while we complete this investigation. We take these allegations very seriously. I nodded, unable to speak. We'll be in touch, Richard said. Thank you for your honesty. I left that conference room feeling like I'd just detonated a bomb that would reshape everything. I left the Scottsdale Tech building that afternoon feeling like I was walking through water. Everything moved slowly, felt distant, like I was watching my own life from somewhere outside my body. Richard Chin had just told me they were placing Owen on administrative leave. Pending investigation. Those words kept echoing in my head. I'd done that. I'd set that in motion. My phone started ringing before I even made it to the parking lot. Owen's mother. I stared at her name on the screen, my thumb hovering over the decline button. Then I thought about the down payment. About 6 years of Sunday dinners at their house. About the way she'd welcomed me into the family, called me daughter, made me feel like I belonged. I answered, Abigail. Her voice was thick with tears. Please tell me this isn't true. Please tell me you didn't do this to my son. Mrs. Callahan, 18 times, she interrupted, her voice rising. I've called you 18 times today. 18. And you ignored every single one until now. I've been in meetings. The company is destroying my son's career because of you. She was crying now, full sobs that made her words come out broken. How could you do this to him? Owen gave you everything. A home. A life. Respect. He supported your career even when people said he shouldn't marry someone so ambitious. And this is how you repay him. My chest tightened. It's not like that. Owen violated company policy. He gave away company property without authorization. He's been manipulating. Over a car? Her voice went shrill. You're destroying his entire life over a car? Over your pride. It's not about pride. He's been sabotaging my performance reviews for 2 years. He opened a credit card in my name without asking. He's been using his position too. You're a liar. The words cut through everything else. Final. You're a liar and a manipulator, she continued, her voice shaking. You seduced my son. You made him think you loved him. And now you're trying to ruin him because you can't control him anymore. Because he finally stood up to you. That's not what happened. I've known my son for 34 years. I know who he is. And I know gold diggers when I see them. She hung up. I stood in the parking lot, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. That was just the beginning. Owen's brother posted on Facebook that evening. I didn't see it at first. I'd been avoiding social media. But Rachel showed me, her face tight with anger. Some people will destroy an entire family over material possessions. Some people value things more than relationships. Some people forget where they came from and who helped them get where they are. Praying for my brother during this difficult time. The comments were worse. Friends of Owen's family, people I'd met at holidays and birthdays, all weighing in about the unnamed person, who was clearly terrible. So sad when people show their true colors. Your brother deserves so much better. Praying for him. Some people are just users. Don't read them, Rachel said, trying to take my phone away. They don't know what they're talking about. But I couldn't stop scrolling. Watching people who'd smiled at me, hugged me, welcomed me into their family gatherings. Watching them all decide I was the villain without knowing any of the actual story. Owen's aunt left a voicemail the next day. I'd met her maybe twice. Once at the wedding, once at a Christmas party 3 years ago. Her voice was cold, clipped. I just want you to know that we see you for what you are. A gold digger who never appreciated what this family did for you. Owen's mother is devastated. His father can barely function. You've destroyed a good man's reputation, his career, his life. For what? Because you didn't get your way? I hope you're happy with yourself. I hope it was worth it. Charlotte's text came that night. 5 paragraphs. Single-spaced. It started with a list of every sacrifice Owen had supposedly made for our marriage. How he'd taken the HR director job at Scottsdale Tech instead of the higher-paying position in California because I didn't want to move. How he'd supported me through difficult periods when I was struggling with work stress. How he defended me to his family when they worried I was too career-focused to be a good wife. None of it was true. Or rather, all of it was true in some alternate version of reality where Owen was the hero and I was the difficult, demanding wife who needed to be managed. The text ended with, I hope you're happy. You've destroyed a good man. A man who loved you. A man who gave you everything. And for what? The car. Your pride. I'll never forgive you for what you've done to my brother. None of us will. I sat on Rachel's couch reading that text over and over until the words blurred together. They're wrong, Rachel said, sitting next to me. You know that, right? They're completely wrong. Are they? My voice came out small. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I should have just. Don't. Rachel's voice was sharp. Don't do that. Don't let them rewrite what actually happened. But it was hard not to. When everyone around you is telling the same story, that you're the problem, the difficult one, the person who destroyed everything, it becomes easier to believe them than to trust your own experience. My mother called the next morning. Honey, she started, and I could already hear the concern in her voice. The worry. Rachel told me what's been happening. With Owen and the company and everything. Did she tell you what Owen did? She told me there was some situation with a car. And that you're staying with Rachel now. Pause. Abby, are you sure you're not overreacting? I know marriage is hard, but it's about compromise. Maybe you two should see a counselor before you burn everything down. I was sitting in Rachel's guest room, staring at the ceiling. The same conversation, different person. Mom, he gave away my company car without asking me. He's been sabotaging my performance reviews for 2 years. He opened a credit card in my name. This isn't about compromise. Silence on the other end. Then, but he's your husband. You made vows. For better or worse, remember. This isn't worse, Mom. This is abuse. Abuse. Her voice went up. Honey, abuse is a strong word. Owen never hit you, did he? No, but... Then maybe abuse isn't the right word. Maybe you're just going through a rough patch. All marriages have rough patches. I closed my eyes. Mom, he's been controlling me for 6 years. Another long pause. I just don't want you to make a mistake you'll regret. Divorce is hard. You'll be alone. And people are going to think you're difficult if you leave him over things like this. Things like this, I repeated. The words tasted bitter. You know what I mean. Married couples work through problems. They don't just give up at the first sign of trouble. This isn't the first sign of trouble. This is 6 years of trouble that I've been ignoring. But honey, I have to go, Mom. I hung up before she could say anything else. Rachel found me 20 minutes later, still sitting on the bed, staring at nothing. Your mom? She asked gently. I nodded. Let me guess. She thinks you're overreacting. She thinks I should go to counseling. Work it out. Not give up so easily. Rachel sat down next to me. Even the people who love us can't always see what we're going through. Especially when the person hurting us is good at looking normal. 2 weeks crawled by. Owen stayed at his mother's house. I stayed at Rachel's. The company investigation continued. Then Elena called. Richard and legal have finished reviewing everything, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Can you come in? There's something we need to tell you. I met her in the same executive conference room. Richard Chin was there again along with the 2 lawyers from before. Abigail, Richard began, what we found during our investigation was more extensive than we initially anticipated. He slid a folder across the table toward me. I opened it, my hands shaking. Trevor's hiring wasn't just a case of Owen being on the panel. Owen had rewritten Trevor's assessment scores after the interview was complete, changing failing marks to passing ones. Then he'd submitted the falsified scores as the official record. The promotion Owen's roommate received hadn't just benefited from Owen's consultation. Owen had written fabricated peer reviews praising the roommate's work, then submitted them as if they'd come from actual colleagues. My performance reviews weren't the only ones Owen had manipulated. They'd found 3 other employees whose ratings had been systematically lowered over multiple review cycles. All people who had in some way annoyed Owen or questioned his decisions. And there were complaints. Harassment complaints that had been filed with HR, filed with Owen, that had disappeared without proper investigation because the accused employees were people Owen liked or had relationships with. This represents systematic abuse of position over multiple years, Richard said. fraud, falsification of records, retaliation, and failure to properly investigate misconduct reports. I stared at the papers in front of me, unable to process it all. We're giving Owen a choice, Richard continued. He can resign quietly with a standard severance package, or we can terminate him for cause. If we terminate for cause, we're obligated to report certain violations to industry oversight boards. That could affect his ability to work in HR anywhere else. What did he choose? I asked. He has 48 hours to decide. But Abigail, you should know. Whether he resigns or is terminated, this is over. Owen will not be working at Scottsdale Tech anymore. I left that meeting feeling numb. This wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about years of corruption I'd been too close to see. Years of Owen manipulating people, systems, careers, all while presenting himself as the professional, competent HR director everyone trusted. That night, I met with Melissa at a downtown office. She'd brought in someone new, Catherine Vance, a family law attorney with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. You need to file for divorce, Catherine said without preamble. Not next month. Not when things settle down. Now. She spread papers across the desk. Arizona is community property. Everything acquired during the marriage gets split 50-50 by default. But, she looked at me directly, the credit card he opened in your name without consent? That's fraud. The way he manipulated your career? That's economic abuse. We can argue he damaged your earning potential and that you deserve compensation. My hands were shaking as I signed the retainer agreement. He's going to fight this, Catherine warned. Men like Owen don't let go easily. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the past 2 weeks. The voicemails. The texts. The social media posts. Owen's family painting me as the villain in a story they didn't understand. I'm prepared, I said. That night, Owen was served with divorce papers at his mother's house. He called me at midnight. You're really doing this? His voice was raw, broken. After everything we've been through. After 6 years. You're really throwing it all away. Yes, I said. I'm really doing this. You'll regret this, Abby. His voice changed, went cold. I'll make sure you regret this. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness of Rachel's guest room, my phone still in my hand, wondering if I was strong enough for what was coming. Then I remembered Elena's words. Asterisk, you were surviving it. There's a difference. Asterisk. I was done surviving. It was time to live. The morning after Owen's midnight phone call, I woke up on Rachel's couch with my phone clutched in my hand and the taste of regret in my mouth. Not regret for filing for divorce, but regret that it had taken me 6 years to get here. Catherine Vance called at 8 a.m. Owen's retained counsel, she said without preamble. Gerald Hoffman. You know that name. I didn't. He's expensive and he's vicious. Specializes in high-conflict divorces. He's going to come at you hard, Abigail. Are you ready for that? I don't know, I said honestly. What does hard mean? It means discovery requests that are designed to intimidate. It means depositions where they'll try to make you cry. It means they're going to dig through every aspect of your life looking for ammunition. The first discovery demand arrived that afternoon via email. 23 pages of requests. 5 years of tax returns. Bank statements from every account I'd ever had. Credit card statements. Employment records. Performance reviews. Emails between me and Owen. Text messages. Social media posts. Therapy records if I had any. They're phishing, Catherine explained when I forwarded it to her. Looking for anything they can use to paint you as unstable, vindictive, or financially motivated. I don't have therapy records, I said. Owen always said therapy was for people who couldn't handle their problems like adults. Catherine's silence on the other end was loaded. Then, of course he did. Start gathering everything else on this list. And Abigail? This is going to get worse before it gets better. He was right. We spent the next 2 weeks compiling documents. Catherine was meticulous, organized, strategic. For every document Owen's lawyer requested, she had a response ready. The credit card Owen opened in my name? We had the application showing his handwriting, not mine. We had statements showing purchases I'd never made, golf equipment, expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, a leather jacket I'd never seen. The text messages about the car? We had screenshots going back 3 weeks showing Owen's pattern of guilt trips and deflection. The performance reviews. We had emails from Paul, my supervisor, documenting Owen's interference. We had the company investigation report detailing systematic manipulation. This is good, Catherine said, reviewing everything spread across her conference table. This is really good. They're going to argue you orchestrated Owen's termination to gain advantage in the divorce. We're going to show that the company's investigation was independent, thorough, and found genuine misconduct. Will it be enough? It should be. But Hoffman's going to spin it anyway. He'll say you're a vindictive wife using your company connections to destroy your husband. Owen's first formal court filing arrived a week later. Catherine had warned me it would be bad, but nothing prepared me for seeing it in writing. Respondents systematically manipulated company leadership to orchestrate petitioner's termination in retaliation for a minor disagreement regarding temporary use of a vehicle. Respondents' actions demonstrate a pattern of vindictive behavior and calculated cruelty designed to financially harm petitioner and gain advantage in divorce proceedings. I read it 3 times, each word landing like a physical blow. This isn't true, I said to Catherine. None of this is true. I know. But this is what they're going to argue. Owen's painting himself as the victim of your manipulation. We need to be ready to counter that narrative with facts. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in Rachel's guest room staring at the ceiling, replaying the past 6 years, wondering if there was some version of events where I actually was the villain Owen was describing. Then my phone buzzed with an email. 2 a.m. From an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, about Owen Callahan. My first instinct was to delete it. Probably more harassment from his family. Probably someone else telling me I'd destroyed a good man. But something made me open it. Dear Abigail. My name is Vanessa Pritchard. I worked at Scottsdale Tech from 2018 to 2020 in the HR department under Owen's supervision. I'm reaching out because I heard about the investigation and your divorce through mutual connections, and I think you should know that you're not the first person he's done this to. If you're willing to meet, I have information that might help your case. I understand if you don't want to. This is probably overwhelming enough already. But I wish someone had warned me about him before I started working there. Maybe I can at least help you now. Vanessa. I forwarded the email to Catherine immediately. She called me at 8 a.m. Do you know this person? No. I've never heard the name. I'll have my investigator run a background check. If she's legitimate, this could be important. But be careful. This could also be someone from Owen's side trying to get information. Vanessa checked out. She had worked in HR at Scottsdale Tech, had resigned in 2020, now worked for a nonprofit in Phoenix. No connection to Owen's family or friends that Catherine's investigator could find. We met 3 days later at a coffee shop in Phoenix. Neutral territory, public safe. Vanessa was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that looked older than her face. She was nervous, fidgeting with her coffee cup, glancing around like she was worried someone might see us. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I wasn't sure you would. Your email said Owen did something to you too. She nodded. I was 26 when I started working under him. Just out of grad school, first real HR job. Owen seemed amazing at first. Charming, supportive, always complimenting my work. He made me feel like I was really good at my job. Her hands tightened around her coffee cup. Then he started asking me to do things that weren't in my job description. Personal errands. Picking up his dry cleaning. Getting coffee for his wife. My stomach dropped. For me. He never used your name. Just, my wife. He'd say things like, my wife is really demanding today. I need you to grab her favorite coffee so she's in a better mood. Or, my wife doesn't appreciate how hard I work, but you get it, don't you? I felt sick. I thought I was being helpful, Vanessa continued. Thought I was showing initiative. But then he started crossing other lines. He'd text me late at night, 11 midnight, about work stuff that could have waited until morning. He'd compliment my appearance in ways that felt off. That dress really suits you, or, you should wear your hair down more often. Her voice got quieter. When I started dating someone, Owen got weird about it. Asked intrusive questions about my boyfriend. Made jokes about him not being good enough for me. Suggested I could do better. When I told him it was inappropriate to discuss my personal life like that, everything changed. She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots. Text messages from Owen. You're being ungrateful and unprofessional. I've invested a lot in your development. I'm disappointed in your attitude lately. You used to be such a team player. If you can't handle constructive feedback, maybe HR isn't the right fit for you. Emails documenting performance issues that Vanessa insisted were completely fabricated. Write-ups for being late when she had timestamps proving she was on time. Complaints about her negative attitude and difficulty working with others. He started poisoning my reputation, Vanessa said. Telling other people in HR that I was difficult to work with, that I had personal issues affecting my judgment. I filed a complaint with his supervisor about the inappropriate texts and comments. What happened? Nothing. Owen was so good at covering his tracks. He said he was just being a supportive mentor, that I'd misinterpreted his texts, that I was obviously going through something personal that was affecting my perception. He made me sound crazy. I knew that feeling. That exact feeling of being made to question your own reality. Eventually I just quit, Vanessa said. It was easier than fighting. I found another job, moved on, tried to forget about it. Why are you telling me this now? She looked at me directly. Because when I heard Owen was being investigated, I realized I wasn't the only one. That this was his pattern. He finds someone he can control. Someone younger, someone grateful, someone who trusts him, and when they push back he destroys them. We talked for another hour. Vanessa told me about other things she'd noticed while working under Owen. The way he'd helped his cousin get hired despite failing the interview. The way he'd made negative comments about female employees who were too ambitious or not team players. The way he'd dismissed harassment complaints when the accused were men he liked. I'm willing to testify, Vanessa said as we were leaving. If it helps. If it stops him from doing this to someone else. After Vanessa left, I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried. Not sad tears, angry tears. Frustrated tears. Tears for the 26-year-old woman who'd been excited about her first real job and ended up being manipulated and gaslit until she quit. Tears for myself who'd spent 6 years being manipulated the same way. That night I did something I'd been avoiding. I went back through my own career timeline with new eyes, looking for patterns I'd been too close to see. I'd been promoted to Senior Solutions Architect last year. That was real. I'd earned that through my work, my systems, my contributions to the company. But what about before that? 3 years ago I'd applied for Principal Architect. Made it to the final round. Then got passed over for someone with less experience. 2 years ago I'd applied for VP of Engineering. Again final round. Again passed over. At the time I told myself I wasn't ready. That I needed more experience. That the other candidates were just better fits. But what if that wasn't true? I reached out to Tom, a former colleague who'd been on the VP hiring panel. We met for lunch at a restaurant in Tempe. I need to ask you something, I said after we'd ordered. And I need you to be completely honest. Tom looked nervous. Okay. 2 years ago I applied for the VP of Engineering role. I made it to the final round. Why didn't I get it? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Abby, that was a long time ago. Please. I need to know. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, Owen spoke to the hiring committee privately. After your final interview. My heart started racing. What did he say? He said you were brilliant technically. That wasn't in question. But he had concerns about your leadership presence. He said you were going through some personal issues that were affecting your judgment, and that it might be better to wait another year or two before promoting you to that level. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Did anyone question that? He's your husband. We assumed he knew you better than we did. I drove back to Rachel's apartment in a daze. Sat in her guest room doing math in my head. VP of Engineering would have meant a 40% salary increase. Equity. A seat at the executive table. How much money had I lost because Owen quietly undermined me? How many opportunities had slipped away because the man who claimed to love me was systematically sabotaging my career? I pulled out my laptop and started making a list. Every promotion I'd applied for. Every opportunity that hadn't worked out. Every time I'd been passed over and told myself I just wasn't ready yet. The pattern was there. Clear and undeniable once I knew to look for it. Owen hadn't just been manipulating my performance reviews for 2 years. He'd been sabotaging my entire career trajectory from the beginning. I sent Catherine everything I'd discovered. The list of promotions I'd been passed over for. Tom's admission about Owen's interference in the VP hiring process. The timeline showing exactly how much money and opportunity I'd lost because my own husband had been quietly sabotaging me. "This is explosive," Catherine said when we met the next day. "This isn't just about the car or the credit card anymore. This is systematic economic abuse. We're going to use this." The divorce hearing was scheduled for the first week of March, 8 months after I'd filed. 8 months of discovery, depositions, legal maneuvering. 8 months of Owen's lawyer Gerald Hoffman trying to paint me as vindictive and unstable. 8 months of waiting to tell my truth in a room where it would actually matter. The night before the hearing I couldn't sleep. I lay in Rachel's guest room, which had become more my room than a guest room at this point, staring at the ceiling rehearsing what I'd say on the stand. "You're going to be great," Rachel said, bringing me tea at 2 a.m. "You've got the truth on your side. What if the truth isn't enough? It will be. Catherine's good. The evidence is bulletproof. And Abby, you're finally going to get to say everything you've been holding in for 6 years." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, that particular smell of old carpet and air conditioning. Owen was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table with Gerald Hoffman. He was wearing a charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, his hair styled, his expression carefully neutral. He looked like the Owen everyone else saw. Professional, composed, respectable. The Owen who'd fooled everyone at Scottsdale Tech for years. The Owen who'd convinced his own family I was the villain. But I knew the man underneath that suit. The man who'd called me at midnight to tell me I'd regret leaving him. The man who'd systematically destroyed my career while claiming to support it. The man who'd made me feel crazy for 6 years. Judge Patricia Brennan entered and we all stood. She was in her 50s, with silver hair pulled back severely and an expression that gave nothing away. "Be seated," she said. "Let's begin." Hoffman called Owen to the stand first. Owen walked up with his head high, his hand steady as he placed it on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Then he sat down and Hoffman began his questioning. "Mr. Callahan, can you describe your marriage to the respondent?" Owen's expression shifted into something softer, sadder. "I thought we had a good marriage. I loved Abby. I supported her career even when it meant sacrificing my own opportunities. When she got promoted to Senior Solutions Architect, I was so proud of her. I encouraged her to take it even though it meant more stress, more time at work, more time away from us. It was such a careful lie. Threaded with just enough truth that someone who didn't know better might believe it." "When did things start to change?" Hoffman asked. "After the promotion," Owen said, his voice heavy with manufactured sadness. "She became obsessed with status. With control. Everything had to be exactly her way. If I made a decision without consulting her first, she'd get angry. If I tried to help my family, she'd accuse me of putting them before her." I watched the judge, trying to read her expression. She was taking notes, her face neutral. "Can you tell the court what happened with the vehicle?" Hoffman asked. "My sister Charlotte was going through a difficult time," Owen said. "Her car had broken down and she had job interviews coming up. I asked Abby if Charlotte could borrow her car for a few days, just temporarily until Charlotte could get her own car fixed. Abby agreed at first, but then she changed her mind. She started demanding the car back, saying it was company property, making it into this huge issue." His voice caught slightly, like he was struggling to maintain composure. "When I wouldn't immediately demand the car back from my sister, when I asked Abby to have some compassion for my family, she went to her boss and claimed I'd given away company property. She used her relationship with Elena Rodriguez to manipulate the situation, to make me look incompetent. To destroy my career out of spite." I felt Catherine's hand on my arm, steadying me. "Keep calm," the touch said. "We'll get our turn." Hoffman walked Owen through more of the narrative. How I'd supposedly orchestrated the company investigation. How I'd filed for divorce not because of any real problems, but because I wanted to punish him for not letting me control every aspect of our lives. It was a masterful performance. Owen's voice was steady, sincere, wounded. He looked like a man who'd done everything right and been betrayed by a wife who'd changed into someone he didn't recognize. When Hoffman finished, Catherine stood up. "Mr. Callahan," she said, her voice pleasant, almost conversational. You testified that you were a supportive husband who encouraged your wife's career. Is that correct? Yes. You were proud of her promotion to senior solutions architect? Of course. Catherine walked to her table and picked up a thick folder. Then can you explain these emails? She pulled out printouts, handed copies to the judge, to Hoffman, held one up for Owen to see. These are messages from you to Paul Henderson, Mrs. Morrison's direct supervisor, dated over a 2-year period. In them, you repeatedly suggest that her performance ratings should be lowered. In one email from October 2023 you write, I think Abigail's getting a bit too confident. Maybe a meets expectations rating would help keep her grounded. Can you explain that? Owen's face had gone slightly red. That's taken out of context. I was trying to protect her from appearing to receive preferential treatment because she's married to the HR director. Protect her, Catherine repeated. By damaging her performance record and costing her bonuses. That's not what I... Or what about this text message? Catherine held up a screenshot. This is from you to Mrs. Morrison, dated September of last year. Quote, you're getting too ambitious for your own good. Maybe you should focus more on our marriage and less on climbing the corporate ladder. Does that sound supportive? I was concerned about her work-life balance. Or this voicemail? Catherine pressed a button and Owen's voice filled the courtroom crystal clear. Paul, it's Owen. Listen, I know Abby applied for that principal architect position, but I really think she's not ready for that kind of pressure. She's been dealing with some personal issues lately that are affecting her judgment. Maybe it's better to wait another year or 2 before promoting her. Just my thoughts, but I wanted to share them with you. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Those personal issues you mentioned, Catherine said. What were they? Owen shifted in his seat. I don't recall specifically. You don't recall? You told your wife's supervisor she had personal issues affecting her judgment, and you don't remember what those issues were. It was 2 years ago. Or were you simply lying to prevent her from getting promoted? Objection, Hoffman said. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. But her expression had changed. She was looking at Owen differently now. Catherine spent the next hour systematically dismantling Owen's narrative. She presented the company investigation findings, page after page documenting Owen's misconduct. She presented Vanessa's testimony about his pattern of manipulation. She showed the credit card application with Owen's handwriting, the statements showing thousands in purchases I'd never made. She showed evidence that Owen had manipulated hiring decisions, promotion decisions, performance reviews, not just mine but other employees too. By the time she was finished, Owen's wounded dignity had evaporated. He sat in the witness chair looking cornered, trapped, his face flushed with barely contained rage. No further questions, Catherine said. Then it was my turn. Catherine called me to the stand. My hands were shaking as I placed them on the Bible as I swore to tell the truth. But when I sat down and looked out at the courtroom, at Owen's red face, at the judge's neutral expression, at Catherine's steady, encouraging nod, something inside me settled. Mrs. Morrison, Catherine began, can you describe your marriage to Owen Callahan? I took a breath. I spent 6 years making myself smaller so Owen could feel bigger, I said. I apologized for having needs. I accepted blame for his anger. I believed him when he said I was too sensitive, too demanding, too ambitious. I let him convince me that caring about my own career made me a bad wife. I looked directly at Owen. But the car wasn't about the car. It was about the fact that you'd been taking pieces of me for years, and I'd finally run out of pieces to give. It was about realizing that I deserved a partner who celebrated my success instead of sabotaging it. It was about choosing myself for the first time in 6 years. Catherine walked me through everything. The credit card. The vacation time. The performance reviews. The lost promotions. Each answer felt like removing a weight I'd been carrying. When it was Hoffman's turn to cross-examine me, he tried his best. Suggested I'd orchestrated Owen's termination. That I'd manipulated the investigation. That I was playing the victim to gain sympathy. But I didn't waver. I reported unauthorized use of company property, I said clearly. The investigation found misconduct that had nothing to do with me. Owen destroyed his own career. The judge took 2 days to issue her ruling. When we returned to court, Judge Brennan's expression was severe. I've reviewed all the evidence, testimony, and documentation presented in this case, she began. What I've seen is a disturbing pattern of financial manipulation, professional sabotage, and emotional abuse masquerading as marriage. She awarded me the house. The one Owen's parents had helped us buy, the one he'd claimed entitled him to a larger share. She ordered Owen to pay me compensatory damages for the career opportunities I'd lost due to his interference. $75,000. She denied his request for alimony. She ordered him to reimburse me for half of all the fraudulent credit card charges. Mr. Callahan, Judge Brennan said, looking directly at Owen, you used your position, your marriage, and your family connections as weapons to control and diminish your wife. You sabotaged her professionally while claiming to support her. This court finds your conduct reprehensible. Owen's face was white with rage. As we left the courtroom, he tried to approach me. Catherine stepped between us. My client has nothing to say to you. Owen's voice was low, bitter. You'll never be happy, Abby. I looked at him, this man I'd spent 6 years trying to please, and felt nothing but pity. I'd rather be alone, I said, than be with someone who made me feel alone. I walked out of that courthouse into bright March sunlight, and for the first time in 8 months I could breathe fully. Catherine walked beside me, her briefcase in one hand, her phone already out to field calls from other clients. You did great in there, she said. I mean it. You were clear, composed, honest. The judge saw exactly what Owen is. Thank you, I said. For everything. That's my job. She stopped at her car, turned to face me. But Abigail, what you do next, that's the important part. Don't spend the next year looking back. Look forward. Build something new. I took her advice. The divorce was finalized in April. By May, I'd moved out of Rachel's guest room, where I'd lived for nearly a year, and into a small apartment in Scottsdale. 1 bedroom, big windows, a balcony that overlooked the city. It was mine. Not ours. I furnished it slowly, deliberately. A couch I picked out myself. Deep blue, comfortable, nothing like the stiff beige thing Owen had insisted on. Art on the walls that I actually liked. Abstract pieces with bold colors that made me happy when I looked at them. A kitchen table where I could spread out my laptop and work without someone telling me I was too focused on my career. Work became my refuge and my redemption. I threw myself into the API integration project that had been delayed during all the chaos. Stayed late, came in early, built something I was genuinely proud of. My team noticed the difference. The way I'd stopped apologizing before I spoke. The way I made decisions with confidence instead of second-guessing every choice. Jennifer, my assistant, pulled me aside one day in June. I don't know what happened, she said, but you're different. Better. More like the person I thought you were when I first started working for you. I'm just finally being myself, I told her. In September, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Elena called me into her office. I walked in to find not just Elena, but Richard Chin, the CEO, waiting for me. My stomach dropped. Is something wrong? Quite the opposite, Richard said, gesturing for me to sit. We're creating a new position. VP of Solutions Architecture. The board met yesterday and unanimously agreed that you're the right person for the role. I stared at them, unable to process what I was hearing. Elena's been singing your praises for months, Richard continued. The API integration project came in ahead of schedule and under budget. The client retention rate in your division is the highest in the company. You've mentored 2 junior architects who are now outperforming people twice their age. Abigail, you're exactly what this company needs in leadership. I don't know what to say. Elena smiled. Say yes. You've earned this 100 times over. And Abigail, this time, there's no one whispering in anyone's ear that you can't handle it. The promotion came with a 40% raise, equity, a larger team, and a seat at the executive table. The same executive table where decisions about my career had been made in rooms I'd never been invited into. I hired 2 new architects that fall. Both women, both brilliant, both hungry to prove themselves. I mentored them the way I wished someone had mentored me, without games or manipulation, just honest feedback and real support. I spoke at a conference in Seattle in October. Then another in Austin in November. By December, I'd published 2 papers on systems architecture and security protocols that got picked up by industry journals. At the company holiday party, Richard pulled me aside near the bar. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice low. Owen used to talk to me about you. Before everything came out. He'd say things like, Abigail's brilliant but she's fragile. Too much pressure and she'll break. We need to be careful about how much responsibility we give her. I'm ashamed to say I believed him. I felt that old familiar tightness in my chest, but it didn't consume me like it used to. I'm glad I finally see the truth, Richard continued. What's that? That you were never fragile. You were just being crushed. I'd sworn off dating for at least a year. Maybe 2. Maybe forever. But James kept showing up. I met him at a tech security conference in November, right after my promotion. He was presenting on API vulnerabilities, and I asked a question during the Q&A that turned into a 30-minute conversation afterward. He was tall, soft-spoken, with gray streaks in his dark hair and laugh lines around his eyes. Divorced 3 years earlier. Cybersecurity architect at a different firm. No overlap with my professional world, no complicated history, just a guy who was genuinely interested in the technical problem I'd raised. Want to grab coffee? He'd asked. I'd love to hear more about your integration approach. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a weekend hiking trip to Sedona in January. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He celebrated when I told him about landing a major client, instead of finding ways to diminish the achievement or make it about himself. When I finally told him about Owen and the divorce, sitting on a red rock trail with the Arizona desert stretched out below us, he was quiet for a long time. That must have been incredibly hard, he said finally. It was. But it was also necessary. I'm sorry you went through that. He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. But I'm also grateful because the woman who survived that, the woman who fought her way out and rebuilt her career and learned to trust herself again, she's incredible. By March, a year after the courthouse, we were spending most weekends together. His apartment or mine, hiking or cooking or just existing in the same space without tension or calculation or fear. He never once made me feel like I was too much or too ambitious or too focused on my career. When I got excited about a technical problem, he leaned in and asked follow-up questions. When I worked late, he brought dinner to my office and sat quietly reading while I finished. One Saturday evening in April, we were sitting on his couch after dinner and he asked carefully, "What would you think about me meeting your mom?" I looked at him. This man who made me laugh, who challenged me intellectually, who never once tried to make me smaller. I'd like that. Yeah. But James, I need you to know something. I'm never going to be the woman who makes herself smaller. I'm never going to apologize for my career or my ambition or taking up space. If that's going to be a problem. He pulled me closer, kissed my forehead. Good. I don't want you to be the woman you are, ambitious, driven, brilliant, taking up all the space she deserves. That's exactly who I want. I ran into Owen on a Saturday afternoon in late May, in a Whole Foods parking lot in Scottsdale. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd gained weight, his hair had gone almost completely gray, and he had this look, defeated, diminished, like life had worn him down. Abby. His voice made me stop. Turn around. Owen. We stood there for a long, awkward moment. Two people who'd once shared a life, now strangers in a parking lot. I heard about your promotion, he said finally. That's really good. Thank you. I'm working at a startup now. In Tempe. Smaller company, smaller role. Fresh start. I nodded, unsure what to say. I've been in therapy, Owen continued, the words coming out stiff, rehearsed. My counselor says I have control issues. That I was not a good partner to you. That I used manipulation instead of communication. It wasn't an apology. Not quite. But it was acknowledgement, which was more than I'd expected to ever hear from him. I hope therapy helps you, I said, and I meant it. I really do. He looked at me and something in his expression cracked. That performative composure he'd always worn like armor. Are you happy? I thought about my apartment with the blue couch and the art I loved. About my job, my team, the respect I'd earned on my own merit. About James, who was probably at my place right now setting up for movie night like he'd promised. Yes, I said. I really am. Good. His voice was soft, genuine. That's good. You deserve that. We said goodbye. I watched him walk away. This man who'd once controlled so much of my life, now just another person I used to know. I felt no anger. No bitterness. Just a quiet gratitude that I'd found the strength to leave. That evening I drove home through the Phoenix sunset. My Audi, the car that had started everything, handled smoothly, the leather seats worn now in familiar places, the radio playing something I'd chosen instead of something Owen preferred. The mountains glowed pink and gold. The same colors I'd watched from my kitchen window on those mornings when I felt like I was disappearing, when Owen's espresso machine hummed and my instant coffee seemed like a metaphor for everything I'd given up. But I wasn't disappearing anymore. I was taking up space, building something real, choosing myself every single day. James was waiting when I got home, takeout spread on my kitchen table, a documentary queued up about deep-sea exploration that he knew I'd love. "How was your day?" he asked, pulling me into a hug. "Strange," I said. I ran into Owen. "And it was fine. He's in therapy." He acknowledged some things. It was almost sad seeing him like that. James kissed the top of my head. "You're allowed to feel compassion for him. That doesn't mean you made the wrong choice." "I know." We ate dinner, watched the documentary, fell asleep on my blue couch with his arm around me and my head on his chest, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real, uncomplicated peace. Elena had asked me once, months after everything settled, if I regretted how it all went down. No, I'd told her. I regret how long it took me to speak up. But I don't regret speaking up. She'd smiled, that warm, knowing smile that had given me courage in that conference room on a Tuesday morning that changed everything. "Watching you stand up for yourself that day," she'd said, "that made me proud to be your boss. But more than that, it reminded me why we have policies, why we protect people, and why silence is never the answer when someone's being diminished." He was right. Silence wasn't the answer. The answer was a single moment of truth in a conference room. A boss who refused to look away. A woman who finally learned she was worth fighting for. Worth every difficult conversation. Every uncomfortable moment. Every bridge burned with people who valued my silence over my dignity. My Audi still sits in my reserved parking spot every morning. VP of Solutions Architecture, the sign says now. But it was never really about the car. It was about learning that the cost of peace isn't supposed to be pieces of yourself. It was about discovering that respect isn't something you earn through surrender. It's something you demand through boundaries. It was about understanding that the right person doesn't make you smaller. They celebrate your size. I lost a marriage. A house I'd helped pay for. Relationships with people who chose Owen's version of events over the truth. But I gained something more valuable. I gained myself. And that was worth everything. If this story of standing up and reclaiming your power had you inspired, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Elena asked about the car and Owen casually said, her sister uses that car now. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.